What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Shinkumo Project. Once again, this is Kyo, bringing you the introduction to a series we're starting called Whatever Happened To. What is it about the 80s that makes us smile and long wistfully for that age of big hair, neon clothing, Back to the Future, Michael Jackson, and Pac-Man? There's no doubt we've seen multiple revivals of the 80s, and like most of this type, our obsession with the 80s has lasted longer than the decade itself. Us Gen Xers may be the first to be able to take advantage of exponentially advancing technology to show our younger counterparts almost all of the media and entertainment we grew up on with nothing more than a swipe or a download. The 80s might just be the first decade we've managed to somehow perfectly preserve. We view the 80s with a filter of innocence and nostalgia that is unmatched in how we look at any other time period in history, and personally I'm okay with that. While the history books will always be there to remind us of our mistakes, rose-colored retrospective is a lot more fun, and it's how us humans have always tried to take all the good things from an era and leverage them moving forward in time with us. In this series, we'll be looking at what it was like to be a kid in the 80s, back when our moms kicked us out of the house after Saturday morning cartoons, told only to be home by the time the streetlights came on. Totally unreachable all day, with only a bike and a few dollars and an acid watch jeans pocket, and if Santa was kind, you'd have a Walkman playing a mixtape you and your buddies made on a state-of-the-art dual-deck boombox. Back then, we had nuclear bomb drills telling us to hide under a desk when the big one came, and music somehow making the Cold War bearable. Synthesizers were making their mark. Neon lights were everywhere with clothing to match. Speaking of wars, everyone knew Betamax was better, but VHS was going to win. Records were losing the war to cassette tape, which was losing the war to CDs if you could afford them. The Coke-Pepsi battle was everywhere, with Pepsi winning the commercial wars and Coke winning on brand recognition. There was certainly a lot more community back then. You could get an ass whooping from just about anyone's mom, and it was sorta okay. We actually had to get together or go someplace to get things. It was commonplace to run into one of your school friends at the video store while your family argued about what tape to rent. You went to the mall for everything from school clothes to electronics, while secretly trying to get away long enough to spend those quarters burning a hole in your pocket at the arcade. It was more than a shopping center. It was a social hub that Facebook simply can't match. Selfies took a long-ass time to develop, especially if it was the first pic on the roll of film, and there were way more waterbeds than there were personal computers. The 80s gave us the compact disc, Prozac, Nintendo, both Mac and Windows, camcorders, and an MTV that actually played music videos. But more importantly, it gave us a look at what happens when people living in a prosperous superpower country say, okay, now what? Join us in taking a rose-colored look back at our past in the Whatever Happened To series. I'll be the short Asian guy in the back with the rising sun bandana on my head, sweatbands on my wrist, probably trying to break dance.